Castle Menzies isn't just a fortress, it's a saga of defiance, divided loyalties, and survival against the odds. Rising near Aberfeldy, the stronghold commanded the vital Scottish Highland route between north and south. Its Z-plan towers made it nearly impossible to storm, and its location made it irresistible to both rebels and kings. In February 1746, it would face its most dangerous guest. Bonnie Prince Charlie, fleeing north after the failed siege of Stirling, slipped briefly inside its halls. His presence lasted only 2 nights, but the consequences would haunt the clan for centuries. Yet this was not the first trial by fire. The story of Castle Menzies begins in 1502, when the Menzies' ancestral home, the Place of Weem, was torched in a feud with Neil Stewart of Garth. What remained was rubble, and a reminder that in the Highlands, safety could vanish overnight. The family's answer would rise decades later, built not just to endure, but to defy. Between 1571 and 1577, Sir James Menzies commissioned a bold new residence, Castle Menzies. Its Z-plan design was cutting-edge, a central block flanked by 2 diagonal towers that eliminated blind spots and created overlapping fields of fire. For centuries, that geometry helped the fortress resist both attack and decay, even surviving Victorian alterations. Above the entrance, a carved stone escutcheon bore the initials of Sir James and his wife, Barbara Stewart. It was more than ornament. It was a declaration of alliance, literally set in stone. Visitors crossed the threshold under a marriage that tied power to power. Perched near the River Tay, the castle controlled vital trade and military routes. It was a home, a fortress, and a statement of dominance. But the real danger was never at the gates. It was inside the clan itself. The Jacobite Risings exposed a dangerous divide within the Menzies clan. Sir Robert Menzies, the chief, pledged loyalty to the Hanoverian crown to safeguard his estates and titles. But many of his clansmen, led by Archibald Menzies of Sheehan, took up arms for the Stuarts. 1 clan, 2 banners. Sometimes Menzies' men met across the battlefield as enemies. This was no accident. It was strategy. If the government triumphed, Sir Robert's loyalty preserved the family's lands. If the Stuarts returned, Archibald's service could prove the clan's devotion. Like their castle's design, it was defence from every angle. Political firepower instead of musket shot. But strategy came at a cost. Archibald fell in battle for the Jacobite cause. The loss deepened the wounds of a clan already torn in 2. Around the Great Hall's table, silence could weigh heavier than stone, as family bonds strained under opposing loyalties. Survival was bought with fractures no walls could hide. Other clans who chose one side, like the Camerons and MacDonalds, lost everything after Culloden. The Menzies held their seat, but at the price of unity. And in February 1746, that delicate balance was tested by footsteps approaching their castle in the night. In February 1746, Bonnie Prince Charlie abandoned the failed siege of Stirling and turned north. His army was weakened, morale fading, and Inverness was his last hope. On the road stood Castle Menzies, commanding crossings between highlands and lowlands. For the prince, it was a refuge. For the Menzies, it was a test. Charles arrived on February 4th and stayed 2 nights. The clan chief, Sir Robert Menzies, had already removed himself. Loyal to the crown, he could not risk being seen as the prince's host. That decision fell to his wife, Lady Mary Stewart, a relative of the Stuarts themselves. When Charles appeared at the gates, she welcomed him in. Inside, the atmosphere must have been electric. A fugitive prince at supper, government patrols nearby, and every whisper carrying the risk of betrayal. Lady Mary's hospitality was bold, but perilous. To shelter Charles was to risk ruin. Today, visitors can still see Prince Charlie's room, where he slept uneasily behind thick stone walls. For the Menzies, his visit was survival. For the prince, it was only a pause on the road to Culloden. And if you're drawn to stories where castles become crossroads of history and survival, make sure you subscribe. Because just 4 days later, the quiet at Castle Menzies shattered. The Duke of Cumberland's Redcoats thundered to the gates. They weren't guests seeking shelter. They came as conquerors. The Redcoats expelled the Menzies family and turned their ancestral seat into a garrison. Halls became barracks, chambers housed soldiers, and the message was unmistakable. Even clans that claimed loyalty would pay for harbouring the prince. Castle Menzies was no longer a home, it was a warning. Its location made it irresistible. Standing at a key crossing outside Aberfeldy, it controlled Highland routes vital for troop movements and supplies. Whoever held Menzies held the roads. For the government, seizing it was both tactical and symbolic. A show of strength carved directly into stone. Inside, the Z-plan towers once built to repel attackers now sheltered them. Gates were braced, furniture stripped for barricades, and boots scarred the passageways. The very design that had promised defence now echoed with occupation. The seizure shattered the clan's careful balance of loyalties, and though the soldiers eventually marched on, not everything they left behind was made of iron and stone. Some say unrest itself seeped into the walls and lingers still. The seizure of Castle Menzies in 1746 left scars on its stone, but what lingers most are the hauntings said to drift through its halls. Over the centuries, the fortress gained a reputation as one of Scotland's most haunted strongholds. A place where history breathes not only in books, but in whispers and shadows. Foremost is the Grey Lady, or White Lady. Witnesses glimpse her glowing silhouette on the upper floors, said to be a woman mourning the lover she lost in battle, condemned to wander until she finds him again. Her sorrow embodies the human cost of clan wars, grief that never left. Others claim to see spectral soldiers, Jacobites or Redcoats, patrolling the library and halls, echoes of the 1746 occupation. Poltergeist tales abound, footsteps in empty corridors, voices at the edge of hearing, and a nanny's door that locked itself so often it had to be disabled. Some visitors report glowing orbs of light. Others refuse to enter the cellars, where 3 witches are said to brood in the dark. Haunted or not, these stories give Menzies another identity. Fortress, memorial, legend. So would you dare to sleep in Prince Charlie's room tonight? Because after the ghosts, the castle still faced another enemy: time itself. By the mid-20th century, Castle Menzies was a ruin. After the death of Sir Neil Menzies in 1910, the direct family line ended. The fortress passed through indifferent hands, sold and neglected, until Highland weather broke its roof and rotted its core. By the 1950s, it was considered unsafe, its collapse seemingly inevitable. Then, in 1957, the reformed Menzies Clan Society took a gamble. For just £300, they purchased the derelict castle, not as a financial investment, but as an act of faith. Volunteers began the rescue by bracing walls, stripping out rotten timbers, and focusing on the 16th century Z-plan heart that had defined the stronghold for centuries. Later additions, too far gone, were demolished. What mattered most was preserved. Leadership came from Dr. Bill Dewar and his wife Anne, who guided restoration for decades. Both were later honoured by the Crown for their service in saving the castle. In 1993, the Menzies Charitable Trust secured the stronghold's future. Today, Castle Menzies thrives as a heritage site and clan seat. Visitors step into Prince Charlie's room or gather for annual reunions where music fills the halls once again. From near collapse, the castle endured, because resilience once set in stone was carried forward by a community that refused to let it fall. Castle Menzies is more than a fortress. Its survival written two ways. In stone, through its 16th century Z-plan towers, eliminating every blind spot. And in politics, through divided loyalties that kept the clan alive when others were destroyed. Walls and choices. Together, they preserved a legacy that still stands. Today, it's a living museum and clan seat, where rebellion, loyalty and endurance echo through every hall. In Prince Charlie's room, you can feel the weight of those choices pressed into the stone itself. But here's the question. Would you have risked everything for the Jacobite cause, or chosen survival at any cost? Tell us in the comments, and subscribe for more untold stories hidden in stone.